We've just received new information on the deaths of Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife. This comes from a search warrant ABC News has obtained from Santa Fe County Sheriff's detectives. The couple was found yesterday inside their home in New Mexico.
A famous Hollywood actor spent his last years hidden away in a big house in the New Mexico mountains. When workers finally opened the front door, they found something shocking inside. Gene Hackman, a two-time Oscar winner who was a big star for many years, had been living a life that few people knew about.
Now with new details on the investigation into the death of actor Gene Hackman, including newly released video. Trevor Alt is here with the details. Good morning again,
Good
Trevor.
morning, Michael. And this was such a mystery for investigators. We have now received a trove of new information. It includes details on what Betsy Hackman was searching for before she died.
What really took place in that house during his final days? And why did it take so long for anyone to realize something had gone terribly wrong? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth about what they found inside Gene Hackman's mansion. The front door was already open. On February 26, 2025, two maintenance guys pulled up to a gated mansion on a hill in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The job description was standard, but the energy changed the second they walked up to the house. The front door was wide open. There was no broken glass or signs of a break-in. Just a door swinging in the breeze, looking like whoever lived there stepped out for a second and forgot to exist. They looked through a window, and that is when everything changed. Inside, they could see a woman lying motionless on the bathroom floor. She was not moving, and a few rooms away, in a mudroom near the kitchen, a man was also on the ground, and neither of them was breathing. The workers immediately contacted the caretaker of the gated community, who called 911. When deputies arrived, they confirmed what the workers had feared. Both individuals were deceased. One of the couple's dogs was also found lifeless inside a crate in the bathroom. The woman was identified as Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist and the wife of Gene Hackman.
The ETA on AC, we still need to clear the house, and there's a large German Shepherd inside.
A couple minutes out, I'm showing him passing Hyde Park and...
The man in the mudroom was Gene himself. Both bodies showed obvious signs that they had been there for a while. Partial decomposition and mummification were visible on both, which meant this was not something that had just happened. Two of the couple's other dogs were found alive, able to come and go through a dog door. But the third dog, a Kelpie mix named Zinna, had been locked in a crate and did not survive. Investigators found scattered prescription pills on the bathroom counter, a space heater on the floor, and two green cell phones. Medical records and a 2025 planner were also recovered for evidentiary purposes. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to have been stolen. The couple's art collection was completely untouched on the walls and shelves throughout the home.
All right, bye.
Everything pointed to something deeply tragic rather than criminal. The scene raised more questions than it answered. But the real story was not just about how Gene Hackman died. It was about the extraordinary life he had lived before the world stopped hearing from him, and why nobody had seen this coming. What kind of path leads a man from total rejection to the absolute top of Hollywood? The man Hollywood said had no talent. Before Gene Hackman became a Hollywood legend, the people running the industry told him he was completely talentless. They did not sugarcoat it either. When he showed up at the Pasadena Playhouse in 1956, the instructors hated everything about him. He was older than the other kids, already married, and fresh out of a 4-year stint in the Marines. The guy was the definition of a misfit. His own classmates voted him, and his only real friend at the school, a young aspiring actor named Dustin Hoffman, as the least likely to succeed. Gene reportedly received the lowest score the Pasadena Playhouse had ever given a student. Hoffman later said that Gene was actually expelled from the school after just 3 months for not having talent. It was the first time they had ever done that to anyone. Instead of giving up, Gene got angry. And that anger turned into fuel. He moved to New York City with almost nothing. He worked as a shoe salesman, a furniture mover, and a doorman at a Howard Johnson's restaurant. One day, while working the door, he ran into a former Marine officer who looked at him and reportedly said that Gene was a sorry excuse for a person. He also bumped into a Pasadena Playhouse instructor who told him his doorman job proved he would never amount to anything. In New York, Gene linked up with Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall. The three of them crammed into tiny apartments, swapped roommates, and dragged themselves to endless auditions. Casting directors constantly told them they were way too ugly to ever be leading men. Gene scrambled for small off-Broadway roles, moved up to television gigs, and finally snagged a part in the 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty. That single role scored him an Oscar nomination and flipped the script completely. It must have felt pretty good to hold an Academy Award while remembering the exact faces of the executives who thought they belonged in radio. The kid who got kicked out of acting school for having zero talent was suddenly one of the most exciting performers in Hollywood. But fame never sat comfortably on Gene's shoulders. How does a man who fought so hard for recognition end up running away from it entirely? The career that towered over everyone. Once Gene Hackman finally broke into the industry had to deal with him. In 1971, he played Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, a miserable, gritty crime movie famous for a chaotic car chase. That role got him the Academy Award for Best Actor. He went from the guy getting laughed out of casting rooms to the guy everyone had to pretend they always believed in. It is funny how fast Hollywood executives change their minds the second a gold statue enters the room. Suddenly, nobody remembers calling him ugly. For the next 30 years, Hackman just kept showing up and delivering. He played Lex Luthor in Superman, then turned around and starred in The Conversation, a movie about intense paranoia directed by Francis Ford Coppola. He brought that same aggressive energy to Mississippi Burning, which bagged him another Oscar nomination. He played coaches, criminals, politicians, and con artists, and changed his entire vibe for every single role to the point where people completely forgot they were looking at the same actor. In 1992, Clint Eastwood cast him in the Western Unforgiven as Little Bill Daggett, a sheriff who was just casually cruel. He played the guy with this creepy, quiet calm that made the audience deeply uncomfortable. It worked, and he took home his second Academy Award, this time for Best Supporting Actor. He also snagged a Golden Globe in 2001 for playing Royal Tenenbaum, a deeply flawed, bizarre father figure in a Wes Anderson movie. By the time he called it quits, the guy had racked up 5 Oscar nominations, 4 Golden Globes, and 2 BAFTAs. What made Gene different from every other actor of his era was his range. He could play the warmest father in one movie and the most terrifying villain in the next, and both performances would feel completely real. He brought depth to characters that lesser actors would have turned into cartoons. When he played a corrupt sheriff, fans actually feared him. When he played a struggling basketball coach in Hoosiers, fans rooted for him. He made people feel things they did not expect to feel. And he did it over and over again for 4 decades. Then, 2004 rolled around, and things took a weird turn. Gene made a completely forgettable comedy called Welcome to Mooseport with Ray Romano, and then he just walked away. During a casual interview with Larry King, he just mentioned that he had nothing scheduled and figured his career was pretty much done. A standard stress test had picked up some serious heart issues, which finally forced him to rethink the grind. By 2008, he officially confirmed he was done with the acting business for good. He survived a 4-year stint in the Marines, decades of cutthroat Hollywood politics, and countless directors telling everyone he was too ugly to be on screen, only to decide that a comedy with Ray Romano was the perfect note to end a legendary career on. Just like that, one of the greatest actors of all time walked away from Hollywood and never looked back. But where did he go, and what was he doing inside that mansion in the mountains for the next 2 decades? The answer is more surprising than anyone expected. The woman who became his whole world. Gene met Betsy Arakawa in the 90s at a gym in California, where she was working part-time. Betsy was a classically trained pianist. She was reserved and 30 years younger than Gene. They started dating in 1984 and married on December 1st, 1991. It was Gene's second marriage, after his 3-decade union with Faye Maltese, with whom he had 3 children. By the early 90s, Gene and his wife Betsy set up camp in a massive compound in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The place sat on 53 acres at the top of a hill inside a gated neighborhood called Santa Fe Summit. The main house was over 13,000 square feet, packed with 5 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. The property also featured a separate 3-bedroom guest house, an art studio, a lap pool, a putting green, and a view that stretched all the way to the Jemez Mountains. And that is exactly what Gene did. After retiring from acting, he threw himself into writing novels and painting. He published 5 books. He set up a studio on the property and spent hours creating canvases, sketching charcoal portraits, and studying art catalogs. Friends in Santa Fe described them as deeply private, rarely seen, and not treated like celebrities at all. Gene was spotted at local art supply stores buying materials. He invested in a few local restaurants. He practiced yoga, boxing, and Pilates. But as the years went on, sightings became less frequent. Neighbors described Gene as increasingly reclusive. One neighbor who lived next door for 5 years said they had never even seen each other. Another longtime Santa Fe resident told reporters that Gene just wanted to be quiet and not be bothered. His last known public appearance was in March 2024. After that, there was nothing. Betsy became his primary caregiver as his health declined, and reportedly, she handled everything alone without in-home support staff. For over 30 years, Betsy was not just Gene's wife. She was his protector, his caregiver, and the only person standing between him and total isolation. But what happens when the person holding everything together is the first one to fall? The investigation that gripped the entire country. When investigators finally walked into the house, they did not find a bloody crime scene or a botched robbery. Nothing was missing, and the doors had not been forced. Instead, they found a situation that was just grim. The condition of the bodies immediately made national headlines. Both Gene and Betsy showed clear signs of decomposition and partial mummification, meaning they had been lying there dead for days, if not weeks. Finding out that a Hollywood icon spent his final days decomposing in a 13,000-square-foot fortress, while the rest of the world assumed he was just enjoying his retirement, is a sad reminder that isolation goes both ways. The medical examiner eventually determined that Betsy passed away first, on or around February 12th, from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Hantavirus is a rare and often fatal disease transmitted through contact with infected rodents. An environmental assessment of the property later found rodent droppings in several outbuildings and live traps on the grounds. In her final days, Betsy had been searching the internet for flu symptoms, COVID-related dizziness, and breathing techniques. She reportedly contacted a doctor on February 12th, complaining of respiratory problems, and made an appointment for that afternoon. However, she never arrived. Gene's pacemaker provided the heartbreaking timeline. It recorded his last heartbeat around February 17th or 18th, roughly a week after Betsy passed. His cause of death was listed as cardiovascular disease with advanced Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributing factor. The medical examiner noted there was no food in his stomach, suggesting he had not eaten for an extended period. Authorities believe he may not have even understood that his wife had died in the other room. That detail is what broke people. The idea that Gene, suffering from advanced Alzheimer's, may have spent his final days completely alone in that massive house, possibly confused and disoriented, possibly unaware that the woman who had cared for him for over 3 decades was already gone just a few rooms away. The investigation confirmed no foul play. Both deaths were ruled natural, but the circumstances were absolutely devastating. The country had its answers about how they passed away, but investigators were not done. What they found, scattered throughout the rooms of that mansion, told a story that was even more emotional than the deaths themselves. What were Gene and Betsy leaving behind for each other in those final months? The love letters nobody expected to find. In April 2025, police released documents and photographs from inside the mansion that changed how the public saw this story. Among the evidence collected during the investigation were handwritten notes scattered throughout the home that Gene and Betsy had been leaving for each other. These were not formal letters, but small, everyday notes. One note from Gene read, "Morning, lovely girl, thinking of you." He signed it, "Love G." In another, he apologized to Betsy for needing her help preparing her own birthday dinner, which was a heartbreaking sign that he was aware his memory was failing him. In one particularly playful note, he joked about forgetting where he was going for an errand and signed off, "Love, what's his name?" Betsy left notes for Gene, too. She would tell him where she was going and what time she would be back. She left jigsaw puzzles on the table for him to work on while she was out. Police photographs showed a stack of large completed puzzles piled up on a table inside the home. In one note, she wrote that she was taking their dog Zinna to obedience class and the vet, and that she would see him back at home. Friends later mentioned that Gene and Betsy had a strict tradition where he cooked dinner for her birthday every single year. By 2023, that ritual had completely vanished from his head. Betsy walked into the house expecting a meal, only to find absolutely nothing. The notes scattered around the property showed that Gene knew his brain was misfiring. The notes changed a sad news story into something very personal. But the mansion still had one more story to share. What happened to everything Gene Hackman left behind? And what does it show about the man the public never truly understood? The legacy that outlived the legend. Once the funeral arrangements were wrapped up, the public immediately started eyeing the estate. The inventory from the house revealed a version of Hackman that completely clashed with his tough guy movie image. In November 2025, Bonham's auction house in New York split more than 400 of his personal items across 3 separate sales. The final numbers were absurd. Bidders cleared out the entire catalog, pushing the total payout to $3 million. Gene's Golden Globe Award for the Royal Tenenbaums sold for over $51,000, more than 17 times its estimate. His Golden Globe for Unforgiven went for nearly $44,000. His Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award fetched over $33,000. But the items that really surprised people were Gene's own paintings. A canvas of poppies sold for over $14,000. A New Mexico landscape brought in over $10,000. Even his paint-splattered easel sold for nearly $11,000. The auction showed that Gene had been living a full, creative life that had nothing to do with Hollywood. He wasn't sitting around watching his old movies. He was painting, sculpting, reading, and writing. His own library of books on art technique, landscape painting, and drawing was in the hundreds. He had museum and gallery catalogs marked up. During his acting career, he had sketched charcoal portraits of the cast members. His Santa Fe studio was a mess, the debris of a man who never stopped creating, even after the cameras went away. When the news of Gene's death broke, tributes poured in from all over Hollywood. At the 2025 Academy Awards ceremony, Morgan Freeman paid tribute to him, telling the audience that Gene was a giving actor who made everyone look better with his gifts. Gene was Brando, Dustin Hoffman wrote, who brought something to the craft that had never been done before, and that people did not immediately recognize as genius. He was fabulous, said Francis Ford Coppola. Dozens more actors like Tom Hanks and Viola Davis shared memories. For a man who'd spent 20 years ducking the spotlight, the outpouring showed Hollywood had never stopped thinking about him. The mansion itself went on the market in January 2026 for $6.25 million. The real estate agents said they would carefully screen potential buyers so that no one with morbid curiosity would be able to tour the property. The listing was for a compound with mountain views, a guest house, an art studio, and 53 acres of private wooded land. It didn't speak of the handwritten love notes, the jigsaw puzzles on the table, or the two people living their last years within those walls, clinging to each other as the world forgot them. What does it say about our culture that a man as legendary as Gene Hackman could spend years fading from sight without anyone truly checking in? Should the entertainment industry do more to look after the people who gave it everything? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.